Hey, this is Sybert signing into Red Alert 3, and I'm here with...
PwnageMachine from the Generals Gentleman.
That is very right, and if you missed it, Generals Gentleman doesn't only do Generals games, but they also do Red Alert 3 every once in a while. However, it is going to be Vindies as the yellow ally is on the left side. Who is on the right side?
We have Eminence as the Empire.
Playing as that standard green Empire, and it looks like he's going for triple dojo. Nothing too fancy there.
And Allied is going for a barracks with a refinery afterwards and sending out an engineer to the middle of the map. We haven't seen any peacekeepers yet, but there is a dog getting scout information on those barracks.
Yeah, and actually the dog going to be heading around down south, around the southern tip of the island as well, just that
camping
scouting
at barracks,
dog.
but it does get crushed by the dojo core. So now we can actually get that engineer out of that dojo core. Likewise, the dojo core from Eminence is actually circling that ore derrick. He is trying to keep it alive from those javelins, maybe trying to run some over if they make themselves exposed.
And Vindy actually going to be splitting around, so it's almost like being in elementary school again, when there's something in between you and someone that you want to beat up, and then you just jump over the table. Except it's not the same at all.
Yeah, not all of us have had a rough childhood like you, but the engineer did actually manage to get that ore derrick, and the dojo core went down, as well as that one as well, actually. So we definitely we've had 2 dojo cores go down, so it's definitely looking like Allied's going to be ahead because of the losses that Empire's had.
However, as we can see, it looks like that going for Naval Yard first before Expand. So yeah, Eminence has lost more. However, he is got his third base just finishing up in a couple of seconds here, and it will, I'm assuming, be spotted by that dog for Vindies. So Vindies, unless he expands or is able to do a lot of damage with these Riptides coming out of that Naval Yard, then he is actually going to be the one that gets behind.
And here comes the Mecha Bay now, so that was actually really interesting seeing such a delayed Mecha Bay, because generally having such a late Mecha Bay can actually leave you really exposed to a really early airfield from the Allied player, which we didn't actually see.
Which is quite bizarre, because the airfield just now going down, and the MCV will get packed up, selling off the Naval Yard, so I guess he just wanted some early anti-infantry, which also, if Eminence would have expanded to the water, those Riptides could have potentially sniped down that refinery, but they won't be quite as relevant.
There is also a instant generator in the water as well, so if he scouts that, he could actually use the Riptides to take down that generator. I'm actually not sure if the dog managed to scout that, but if he did, then he could lose, risking that power. Because the mechas...
One of the Riptides was full of Peacekeepers, and it looks like Vindies is going to be trying to do something silly. Will swoop in with a Vindicator, take out one of the Tengus.
Didn't get the transform, so that Tengu does go down. Usually you see them transform up to survive that bomb.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising when they don't, just because it's so common.
Getting in that Riptide to actually dodge all those Banzai charging, so that was good timing there. He could have lost quite a lot of Peacekeepers had he not actually evacuated that Riptide.
And then he's actually going to be he takes out both of the Imperial Warriors, and then he just unloads, and he's able to clean out a lot of these tank busters. So good moves by Vindicator, good control.
Definitely did a very good exchange there, considering there was several Tengus which hard counter Peacekeepers. He'd actually managed to keep them alive with the better movement speed from the Riptide APC. So using the shields now to actually keep them alive. The Vindicator's missing actually those Tengus. The Apollos is shooting down the Tengus now, but there's just that many of them he's forced to retreat.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, if he would have transformed earlier in the game, he might have been able to get that Vindicator, which may have been even better than trying to fight the Riptides just for cost ratio. But it does look like Vindies has expanded to the water, meaning that he is going to be on 3 and very soon 4 ore nodes, while Eminence, if he doesn't expand, then he will soon fall behind in the macro.
So we have a pretty big Air Force army from our allies here. We have 3 Apollos and a Vindicator and no factory. So he's definitely going to need to get some way of dealing with these Mecha Tengus, because one Vindicator isn't just enough to take down that many. You might have to get a second airfield, or perhaps get some multi-gun turrets up to actually defend against that.
Yeah, and he did go for Refinery. What a weird choice, just because... And actually, I have no idea why Eminence is actually pulling back. He was going to lose that Vindicator, or that Tengu pretty much regardless, and he would have been able to do damage either A, to the MCV, to the oil derrick, or finally, even to that Orc Harvester if he would have just stuck around a little bit longer. But he is going to be dropping down into
multi-gun turret now on the middle of the map, so he's definitely going to be harder to push through the middle. He's going to need to get a lot of Imperial Warriors to actually take that down.
That and the second airfield has gone down. The first one is still standing as well, so it's nothing like redeploying the airfield to the middle ground. He's not selling anything off. He's going to be probably going for some additional Vindicators, really pushing that, pushing the airplay in this game. Most likely going to follow it up with an armor facility.
And here goes Tech 2 now from Allies, so we might actually see some Cryocopters. So they're going to be really fantastic at doing some harassment damage, or likewise might actually see Factory to get some guarding tanks to deal with all of these Tengus. So the Vindicator does try and get those VXs, but it does actually manage to transform them in time, dodging that bombs. The timing as the Empire transforms is so crucial to actually maintaining your unit's survival.
Yes, exactly, and actually transforming again to avoid the Apollos as the barracks does go down for Vindies.
One of them almost dies. Okay,
yeah,
so now we have a Cryocopter coming out. The Cryocopter might see it trying to get some harvesters. Here we go, it's coming out for his northern refinery. Nope,
and it
backs
turns
off.
around.
Okay. Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh yeah, he's going for the harass.
Plenty of Tengus now as well. Tengus, VXs. We haven't seen any tsunamis yet, so he's definitely relying on this.
He's just going for kind of the air power play. And, you know, mixing VXs and Tengus is a solid combination, pretty much any way that you look at it, as long as you do have the control. However, the first tsunami tank does roll on out right there, and desperately going to be trying to deal with this massive Apollos, so Vindies may actually be able to cause a lot of damage.
Apollos are so much better, but with those defense drones, they're actually doing quite well against those superior Apollos. He had to force the retreat on those Apollos, and he did lose several of his Vindicators, so that was a pretty good exchange, because how much cheaper Tengus are to Apollos and Vindicators.
However, he did lose that ore collector, which is going to cost 1,400 credits to rebuild, but then also the lost mining time, which is an even bigger deal because 4 ore nodes have been active longer for Vindies than they have Eminence.
3 Cryocopters, that's going to be a very strong harassment force. He can actually freeze down those harvesters, or Refinery even, very fast with 3. The more Cryocopters you get, the faster they freeze. So now he's actually using the shrink ray to nullify the damage from those VXs. The Apollos are gauging the Tengus, but the Apollos are actually ripping through those Tengus because of how superior they were. Not all of them had drones at that stage, so they didn't have the advantage that they did in that last fight.
And Vindies may actually be able to completely clean up this army because he does have those 3 Tengus, and there's only 3 units right there. You've got the VXs and then the Tengus, and they just all get locked down by those cryo shots.
That one Vindicator actually managed to take down 2 Tengus with a bombing run. For those of you who don't actually know, you can hit stop in between volleys of the bombs, and you can actually save the bombs for each individual targets.
Yep, and that's just one of the differences that kind of separates better and worse players is minor things like
shot
that.
Down. He needs to retreat those Apollos from that.
Those
VX.
Apollos, yeah, that was a bit of a misstep by Vindies, just letting those Apollos take damage when he could have either pulled them back a little bit to the ridge or simply sent them all the way back home if he decided he didn't need them. But he does need to get that 4th base back up.
A lot of infantry on the map here. We have tank busters and javelins in force. Generally, you don't see a lot of infantry coming out Allies just because of how strong the tsunami tanks are at actually crushing over the infantry with their secondary that makes them move faster and get regenerating health. That combined with the Tengus usually means that javelins aren't very strong against a Empire armored unit.
But also, we do need to keep an eye on the spy that has just joined Vindies' army, and he's actually moved it out to the front, disguised it as a peacekeeper, which means that for the low cost of 1,000 credits, he can actually purchase some of Eminence's army to fight for him.
Ah, clever. I didn't actually notice that. He's revealed so well, even I can't find him.
Yeah, if you hit Control tilde, you can get health bars, and it'll give you a little icon, and then just look for the guy in the bow tie.
You clever man, clever man. So we have they're pushing out against Empire now. Actually, he's trying to move himself forward, but the further and closer he gets to him, is actually exposing those Apollos to the VXs. Does manage to get some shots down and take one of them down. He really needs to avoid that army and do harassment where there's no risk of actually taking losses here. So the VXs are trying to shoot down.
No, those Apollos just getting taken out. Vindies not doing a great job with the control, losing a Cryocopter and a Vindicator.
Uh-oh. So that was, I didn't manage to get the Refinery though, so that could have been a good way if you look at it, but he did lose a lot of air units, and the thing is with air units is it's really good to keep them alive, because if you have good unit preservation, they get vet, and then they do more damage, and it actually makes quite a big difference, especially with Vindicators, because then it gets to the stage where if a Vindicator gets a vet 2, I believe, it'll actually one-shot a tank, as opposed to having to get 2 Vindicators in one bomb to kill it.
Yes, that is a very important difference. I'm not exactly sure how the veterancy breaks down. It might be that elite status, but yeah, and it was cost effective for Vindies to take that out, even losing an Apollo, a Cryocopter, and a Vindicator. He lost more than the Refinery is worth, but the lost mining time most likely did make up for it. Although throwing away another Cryocopter almost, actually it does escape barely there, but he almost threw away a Cryocopter, got a kill on a tank buster.
So the Empire is trying to push forward. He definitely wants to get closer and closer to the base as he can, because if you stay too far back near your buildings, then you do run the risk of, if they actually tech up to Tech 3 and get like Athena cannons, then it's very easy for them to actually harass down some of your structures.
And actually this wall segment is it's kind of hilarious because it's been there the entire game. And I want to think that Eminence is like, yeah, I might use it one day, but he threw it down, and we're losing that Refinery again. Although so losing an Apollo, maybe, yes, he will lose 2 Apollos. They both do go down there, crashing into the ridge a little bit.
Dear, you seem to be several seconds in front of me. That's why we seem to be having several awkward moments when we're like, what? That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I am, and I wasn't going to mention it, just so that nobody at home hopefully figured it out, but now that you've already said it...
We've already committed to it. So here the Athena cannon is actually taking down some of these tsunami tanks. He really needs to push that back to actually hold against it now. So the VXs are taking down some of these Cryocopters.
And Vindies running over all of the tank busters. Sorry to cut you off there, but massive exchange of the infantry by these players.
Mirage tank doing the splash damage to do lots of damage against the tsunami tanks because of how close they were together. Even against the Imperial Warriors, the splash damage is very good at dealing with lots of units. The VX now is going to take it down.
Yep, it goes down right there. And additional Vindicators will go down. Both of them do crash to the ground, which is a little bit unfortunate for Vindies. But an exchange there, and I think that it may have actually favored Eminence with that mass infantry run over and also the snipe of those tier 3 units.
Yeah, he lost several tanks, but if you look at these VXs, they're actually getting very strong vet. We have a heroic and 2 elites, because they've been getting so many free kills on these air units when he didn't actually retreat them in time. A couple of Cryocopters, Apollo's Vindicators, so they're getting very strong now. It's actually pretty scary seeing a couple of vetted strikers just absolutely rip through a command center in seconds.
And if we look out to the water, one thing that you gotta give to Vindies is, yeah, the cryo, that might have actually been a cryo-geddon, I'm not entirely sure, but he does force the sell-off of the Refinery and the power plant, which the power plant isn't a huge deal, but that is an annoyance that Eminence will have to rebuild, and that's just, hey, that's more money that Vindies is causing Eminence, more pain.
So I think the pattern we're seeing in this game is that he's managing, the allied player is managing to do a lot of actually harassment against Eminence here. So he keeps doing this harassment, but then when he actually comes to these engagements, he's actually doing Eminence is doing very effective engagements. So it's actually compensating for this harassment damage that he keeps doing.
Precisely, and yeah, that's actually what I wanted to mention with the Refinery going down again. I mean, how many times has he taken out that main base Refinery that's on the top there? 2, 3, 4 times?
I think the Refinery went down once, and the Harvester went down twice. I think so that's a count of 3 times. So that's very effective at actually putting the economy back.
And if we look, oh goodness, on the bottom left side of the map at the expansion, and Eminence is just going to be engaging with that ore collector. Why? Because, you know, why not? He might actually get the kill here as the Cryocopters, and I'm assuming Vindicators, yeah, following it up right there. They're going to be heading out, but he might actually lose that ore collector, and he's...
Oh, no.
Oh.
Could have at least set it up so he could get the vision. Oh, wow, he saves it with the Cryocopter freeze. Fantastic timing.
And it was like a pixel of health difference between life and death for that ore collector. Shaking in his metallic boots, that ore collector is probably as scared as you can get.
So, quite a lot of Mirage tanks here, but there is actually a Wave Force artillery on the field, and that's going to be very dangerous because that can actually push back these Athena cannons and the Mirage tanks when they try and
Although
approach.
not if it gets shrunk down. That is a huge disadvantage.
Oh, almost loses it to that Athena cannon.
And loses it to the Mirage tank. However, Emperor's Rage does go down, allowing Eminence to just roll in here.
So much more attack speed that Emperor's Rage actually gives them, so it's ripping through the Mirage tanks, which normally would be a lot stronger against Tsunami tanks.
Which, on top of the Emperor's Rage, I don't know how many of you actually saw it, but Eminence just rolled right in. He was on top of those Mirage tanks, so he was losing tanks, and because of that honorable discharge, he was doing additional damage, which is just one of those things about the honorable discharge is, if you can get on top of the units, then even though you're losing stuff, you're still gaining an advantage because you're doing so much damage to your opponent.
So we see Vindies try and go for another harassment on that Ore Collector again, but he did manage to, Eminence managed to actually defect that with the Striker VXs, so he did very well. I think he learned his lesson. He's like, well, I have lost my Harvester there several times, so I probably should defend it now.
And the Wave Force Artillery snipes down that Athena cannon, so Eminence has actually got pretty good control this game of those Wave Force Artillery. He's using them very, very effectively. However, Cryogeddon does go down and it may trap the majority of these units. Yes, he will trap 4, 5, 6 units. Oh man, that's painful for Eminence.
The Wave Force Artillery to vetted VXs as well. They're actually vet, so that's going to be a lot bigger blow than you would originally think. But he has managed to throw away some of these Mirage tanks anyway.
Yeah, Vindies just didn't capitalize on that. He froze a bunch of stuff down, and then he didn't make the moves that he needed to, and he ended up losing all of those Mirage tanks, although he does snipe the Wave Force Artillery with the Vindicator strike, loses both Vindicators, so I think, although because of that Wave Force Artillery it was fully heroic, that is a much better engagement for Vindies.
King Oni now as well, which is cool, because you usually don't see King Onis. They're quite a rare unit, but they're very good. With that Bull Rush, you can close the gap, and then you can just use their Crush to actually run over all the other lesser tanks.
Yeah, as long as you aim your Bull Rush properly, then you can both close the distance for your main attack, but then also do damage with it. And we could see these... Oh yeah, and there goes the Bull Rush. Won't actually do anything. And the Spy does get the sell off, and he does go ahead and pay off that King Oni, which means now he fights for Vindies, although he gets completely sniped by the Wave Force Artillery, so...
It was very good timing there, actually, both with dodging that Bull Rush as well as actually getting the King Oni with the Spy Buy.
Yeah, I wasn't actually sure if he was going to be close enough to do it, but it looks like Vindies is actually going to be moving into Eminence's base, and he's going to be pushing in with his Mirage tanks, getting a fully heroic status on both of them, sniping down all of the Wave Force Artillery.
If he can keep them alive now, he regenerate the health on those, and they will be a very unstoppable force. He really needs to kill those Mirage tanks now before they get vet, but the King Oni does get them both by the looks of it. Dodges around the garrison. Beautiful positioning there, keeping that Mirage tank alive so it can actually generate its health.
Great control, but with combination of that heroic Athena cannon, Vindies was able to take down that King Oni, and actually Eminence going to be trying to save his Mecha Bay. Oh, Eminence!
Engineer selling off the MCV for the Engineer to actually full repair that War Factory there.
But he didn't quite get it, and wow, that game... That was some great micro and control by both of these players. That was quite amazing.
Yeah, I think the only thing that Vindies could have done a lot better was pay a bit more attention to his air units, because he did keep losing them to just leaving them, in his base when he should have been backing them away, and that was giving them more and more vet, which he really could have utilized. If Eminence got an opportunity to, he could have just transformed up those VXs, taking down some refineries, because they do so much damage when they're vetted up into heroic status.
Exactly, yeah, just throwing away a lot of air units, but the harassment was so spot on, he actually was able to come out ahead by 400 resources per minute, which is hardly anything at all, but yeah, Vindies was actually able to come out ahead in the resources game, and that didn't play a huge role because it was just those 400 resources a minute, but great control by both of these players, especially in the end with the micro of those units. Some throwaways by both players, but that does happen.
There's a lot of things to multitask. I mean, I'm sure when they're losing those air units, or for example, they are doing several other things that are equally as important.
Yeah, it was always like in the midst of either a battle where he just forgot to move his Apollos back or whatever, or he was, harassing a refinery with his Cryocopters and Vindicators when the Apollos would get taken out.
But I did like to see a mixture of War Factory, Infantry, and the airfield as well. A lot of times it's really one-sided, where it's like an Air Force dominated game, or it's with a Warfact dominated game, but Vindies did a good job of actually mixing in all of his units, and that's probably why he took the game in the end.
Yes, it was a solid mix, utilizing infantry, tanks, and aircraft all the way from basically the beginning to the end of the game, which is something, even if you hated this game, you have to appreciate that. We didn't see Tengu versus Tengu spam. It was...
Yay!
Yes, which, I mean, there's always going to be some degree of spam. However, I mean, it was just a great mix. But I think that
there was much rejoice.
I think that will do what I was going to say. Any last words, PwnageMachine?
What a heroic conclusion.
It was great.
Well, if you liked my cast, be sure to check out my channel, youtube.com/Generals Gentleman. I mainly do Command Conquer Generals, but I also will be doing some Red Alert 3 soon.
Yes, he has already done a little bit of Red Alert 3, so of course you can go check that out if you enjoyed this. And actually, this entire game will be appearing on your channel as well. So I guess I should say to your viewers, come check me out.
Haha.
YouTube.com/CNC Sybert.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening.
This is Sybert signing out.
And PwnageMachine signing out. Goodbye.